Thanks for being here. We have talked a lot about demystifying AI, sort of what it is, what it's not. We've talked a lot about prompts themselves, so how to use them, how to improve your prompting, what to be aware of as far as how is prompting different than like a Google search, for example. There's a different literacy set of skills here, so we've talked about that. I think you'll see here in the presentation, this one's mainly supposed to be the very last in the series. So by the point you get to number 6 here, you've had the fundamentals covered. If you still have more complex questions, this is meant to be like broad. So instead of focusing on smaller issues, it'll be a very broad picture here that I will paint for AI and Web3, the next frontier. So I hope you enjoy it. If you have questions, I'll definitely take them at the end. If there are any super relevant ones, then Laura can take them in the chat. And okay, yeah, let's, I think, get started here. So my name is Rodrigo Gomez. Hopefully you can see my slides. Is that correct?
I can see your slides.
Thank you for the verification. So this is our sixth and final presentation then, and we're delving here into the convergence of AI into this larger conversation that we like to call Web3. So, the idea does rely on those fundamental first definitions and concepts about how it works. And we go over a little bit of that here. So let me start by saying that by this point, if you're coming to presentations on AI, you're in one of two camps. Either bored to death, same stuff we've been talking about for a whole year now, or you're in the other camp, which is hyper excited about the possibilities. Like, where are we taking this conversation next? And of course, rehashing where we've been is also very important. So we've seen the most important chart in 100 years. Got it. User count went up super drastically fast. We have a technology here that with unprecedented use, let's see where this curve goes, right? Long term, like how many of us will be using it much more than now? How many new users will come on board? How many new users have already come on board in 2024 when we just had another GSV summit? And, the tone at this particular summit, I can attest to, was much more hopeful. And how do we use this technology? Whereas the very first few presentations, the very first few conversations were more cautious, more weary of what this thing is. Again, it required some demystifying. So that is still a requirement for most. For some of you, again, you may be in the board camp, been here, done that. Some of the stuff you'll show here is redundant, right? We know what LLMs are and what they're like and how they work, right? ChatGPT in the background doing its thing. How does it work? Libraries of data, patterns of discourse, crafting responses on the spot, never really memorizing, always making new from what it stores from its data sets. Okay, great. We already know about prompting. We know about what it looks like, how you do it, right? If I do a basic one here, I get this basic output. If I do a more complex one, I get a more complex output. If I get really crazy and I do all kinds of development, I can get really, really complex. So, okay, I get that. We understand that part. Let's continue here. Sorry, I'm not able to hit my button. There we go. So we also know that we can generate artworks from it, right? We've been down that conversation. We can redefine artistry. We can innovate and be creative. We can generate anything from visual models like this to much more complex video and much more complex visualized data. And that takes us to conversations about what is real, right? With Sora AI being very good at now faking real content. It puts us into real conversations about ethical usage of this technology, what it will look like down the road. And that really is the main interest here for me. So again, the big picture. So we know there are pros and cons for classroom practice. Yes, we've seen the benefits for education, improved learning outcomes, increased efficiency, real-time insights, applications in the classroom. Got it. We can do that. We've been down that road. Now, of course, we know that there are ethical considerations for responsible AI usage. Of course, we've got data privacy, algorithmic bias, human displacement, accessibility and inclusivity, responsible AI governance. All of that stuff is part of the conversation as well. So this is where we've been. Now, I will sort of pause there to see if there are any urgent questions in the audience as far as going over any of that stuff in more detail. Because the next stuff really takes off from that foundational explanation of where we are in the AI conversation, right? We have seen it transform from initial introduction to, okay, what is it and how do I use it? Then to, well, what is the policy on usage? Can I ban it in the classroom? How shall I ban it? What language will I be allowed to use or should I use, etc. The other stuff that we're going to talk about from this point forward is really more a combination of technologies, a hybrid synthesis of a lot of these parts with other technologies. So I am curious. Let me look through the chat maybe. I'll pause for some hands if there are any urgent questions at this point, because the rest of it, it's really just about fun considerations about where this tech goes from here. So I will pause for some hands, for some comments. If not, we shall continue down the fun road, which gets a little crazier than AI, let me say. Okay, sounds good. Glad to see we have a few others joining us. I've just gone over a summary here of the AI conversation thus far in our presentations. Great, no questions in the chat. Then let's proceed down the very fun road that lies ahead. Now, I have to pause here yeah, I love charts, I love data, but I love philosophy more than that. And one of my favorite philosophers, Soren Kierkegaard, who wrote that life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. And I usually substitute those two. I say it has to be lived forwards, but it can only be understood backwards. I like that order a little bit more. But in any case, it's the reason that having a nice understanding of what Web 1 was and what Web 2 sort of is, that will give us a good picture of what Web 3 aims to be and what AI's role will be in that. Because from the beginning, I've called AI a Web3 tool, part of this new Web3 suite. So what is part of that, right? Well, all right, let's take it back to the 90s then. From the 90s to the early 2000s, to kind of trail away from the AI conversation a tiny bit, we had the launch of Web 1. And many of you remember this, right? Because it was the moment where you plugged in a cable into your computer, right? Eventually a modem, and you somehow got to be transported to this place on your screen that was virtual. It was the internet. And never mind people coming in to pick up the phone line when you were on the internet. That was just a terrible time. And if you wanted to log on, I'm sure those of you that remember, you had to go through that sound that like doo 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 wee, wee, and then you knew, oh, I'm online. Okay. Right. It was a strange time where there wasn't really much that you could do online because online was just coming online. And so it was one-way transaction of data, maybe go to an online like Britannica or something and check out some information, which was being digitized at the time. Obviously, you could do things in the background with coding knowledge. This is still the case, by the way. And the complexity of coding and all of that will sort of go away as AI becomes more dominant in that conversation. But let's just say that the Web 1 phase was from the 90s to the 2000s, right? Just the launch of online, and you will remember it. And so the cutoff point has to be somewhere after that, and a good cutoff point for what then became known or has become now known as Web 2 is 2005 with the launch of MySpace and the idea of Facebook and the idea of Snapchat and all of these platforms that now have taken us one step beyond just passive consumption on the internet. I mean, I made this content that you are now consuming. Uh, Zoom in itself is facilitating a conversation here, a new technology that allows us to engage in real time. And technically, the content now is live, but I think you see the point. This is Web 2 then is the moment where we sort of go online to not just consume passively information, but rather to create it. And so you have this whole new dawn of content creators and a new dawn of certain types of marketing and a new dawn of SEO and a new dawn of, I mean, technological development booms, right? In its slightly different way. And you see why a Facebook can go from only being allowed at college campuses and you having an email sign up to a global phenomenon, like completely outclassing MySpace and still around. And look at what Meta is now. Like, my God, it became $1 billion company. Okay, so like in the 90s, some companies grew to prominence. Well, in 2005, in the launch of Web 2 or the boom of Web 2, certain companies rose to prominence. Okay, got it. So there's always these individuals that come out of these cyclical waves, these technological waves. And the last wave was the one that we sort of have been living in, this world of websites that are interactive and social media and user generated content. I mean, point to nothing else but YouTube. And you have exactly what I'm talking about. Just content creators creating for other consumers directly, peer to peer in some ways. I mean, there is intermediaries like YouTube. But the point here is that has been Web 2. So we're sort of still in it, and most of us are still in it. But there is this looming conversation then of like, well, what is Web 3? Well, AI is a part of it. So any conversations you've been a part of that relate to AI has brought you into the Web 3 conversation. So Web3 is in progress then. So we'll see as we glance backwards where we'll set the boundaries, right? 2005 to what was the RIP for Web2. So what does Web3 promise, pray tell? Like, what is this thing? Well, it represents a shift towards decentralized tools, blockchain technology being one of those tools, empowering users to have more control over their data and experiences. So, in a world where we're all going digital and we want to create digital experiences, relying on the Web 2 stuff will lead to some problems. And we'll talk about those in a second. But just like AI shows up to solve certain problems that have existed in other spaces, the new tools, we'll call them the Web3 tools, are appearing to solve problems in other spaces and to work symbiotically with AI to form this sort of new age, right? If the age of information is behind us, that was the age of the internet. What is coming now is often called the age of autonomy by many. And so let's continue. What are the tools of Web3 to give you a nice broad stroke here? Artificial intelligence, absolutely. Blockchains, which you may be familiar with. Cryptocurrencies, which are quite popular in the news and actually are nothing more than the tokens that power the blockchains. IoT, which I was using when we started this episode or this presentation to silence or add volume to my Google bot. Right, I have a Google machine off in the distance. I tell it raise the volume, lower the volume, turn off the lights, put on my Spotify, or etc. Right, that's IoT, Bluetooth, the Wi-Fi connectivity. That one we know quite well. I mean, the fact that I'm here on a Wi-Fi connection now, presenting all of this is part of this IoT conversation and how it connects to Web3. Think of it like the glue that connects the machines, which are the robots, that will be powered by the AI intelligence and will do work that will be quote unquote paid via decentralized blockchain networks. So this is like the big picture in a whole, like one stroke. This is essentially Web3 and what it promises, right? Key technologies that make up the foundation then of Web3 that it will enable a new era of decentralized applications, smart contracts, peer-to-peer interactions, and allow for greater transparency and trust, which are some of the biggest issues that we have had, right? Transparency and trust. Uh, Blockchains are touted as trustless. And what does that mean? There is a very specific definition, so we can talk about that. But the point is, the AI is part of this conversation of things that are either already here and well integrated into business, or integrating into business in the same way that AI was integrated in this last year. So it's a bigger conversation than just AI. And those of us who understand where AI fits in the larger mold can sort of see where this is going long term. And that's why it's important to consider, well, how does it reshape some of our institutions? How does it challenge some of what we are doing currently? And how does it improve those things as well, right? This is for people who love the technology like me, like the beck and call of, okay, well, how do I gamify learning then using these new tools? And how do I improve my pedagogy then using AI? And how do we rethink writing then looking at these new systems? And how do I rethink ownership and how do I rethink publishing and how do I rethink listen, we have conversations about OER all the time, but no one's looking at blockchain as the solution for that problem, which it absolutely can be. Just disseminized materials to every single student at basically no cost. I mean, by comparison. And so it's more about bringing in the publishers into this new technology. But I'll show an example in a few minutes that I do wonder what the thoughts on that particular example are. This is the promise then that this will all synergize and work together to create this new reality. It's not really a future, it's happening now, it's already live. And some of us are not aware, and some of us are more aware, and some of us are not interested. And I'm thinking, well, we should all be at least a little interested because our students are learning about this stuff, all of it. And so, how do we facilitate those conversations with them about what is what? Well, we need to know this stuff. And if it's a new technological wave, there is a sense of urgency, much like when we had to learn how to use mouses and keyboards. And now that we have to learn to use our voices, and now that we have to learn to use new mobile devices that are not cell phones with applications, but rather voice powered and intuitive. Okay, like how do we learn these new tools and how do we facilitate our students' experiences with these new tools, right? It's more about the creative pursuits for me. So why do we need Web3 from a sort of theoretical standpoint? Well, currently Web 2 is dominated by centralized platforms that control user data and experiences. Web 3 is sort of aims to move away from those platforms to create a more equitable, transparent, and user empowered internet. That's really what it's all about. So, what are the pros? Decentralization, which has good qualities and bad. So, Web3 empowers more control over your data. Is that something you would want? Is the first question to ask yourself. Or do you want someone else to be owning your data? I mean, given conversations of leaks and hacks and all kinds of things that get released by the federated model, which we'll talk about in a second, I'm very much in line with this idea of owning my own data. And if anyone's going to make money off of monetizing my data, why not me directly? Why Google or why this third party issuer? So these conversations end up being very important as far as ownership. And when we talk about ownership in different ways, why not our data? I mean, student records are another case in point. I know that when I've had to order my transcripts, I have to order them from a school and pay a fee to get my records. These are my records. Why should I have to pay a fee to transact for them if they're mine and they belong to? In any case, if I have a hash that shows that it belongs to me, why would I need to pay anyone any fees to give away what is mine? And so this is very much about ownership to some extent. But in any case, decentralization is what allows for that type of ownership to be transparent and truly not centralized. Is that it would be stored across nodes, not in a single server or a single location or Amazon Web Servers. You would store it elsewhere, very much like torrents work, where you decentralize the information, you sort of spread it around. So, for anyone who knows about torrents, blockchain technology is essentially the same thing. A digital receipt. Now, transparency, being a digital receipt, you can see transactions on the blockchain. You can track them. Now, the blockchain then will become related to AI, the data set at the very base. Just like we were talking about AI using data sets to run its programs and do its processes. And you're talking about now blockchain ecosystems with all kinds of data that will become that data set. Data on the blockchain will be what the AI looks into and brings back to us in some form. So transparency is the point. You can always track transactions on the blockchain all the time. If you know how to, absolutely you can. And it requires nothing more than a copy paste. Did this happen is what you would be answering. So a verifiable action on a decentralized ledger, somewhere with public viewability, of course gives transparency. It's the same thing as a receipt, but now doubled up on a public blockchain. It's not just my private receipt that I took home, but one that's actually live and anybody can look at. Okay. Would that lead to more transparency as far as voting goes? I mean, we'll talk about that in a second, because that relates to trust, right? Decentralized systems reduce the need for intermediaries, fostering trust. So data and identity then have been my central point here. the emerging digital landscape. Now, let's take one really great example into account. And some of you, like me, are gamers. So let me take a situation with PlayStation as a case in point. PlayStation recently informed its users that some of its digital content, specifically discovery content, would be removed from their digital libraries due to content licensing arrangements. This means that even if users had purchased the content, they would no longer have access to it after December 31st, 2023. This situation, of course, highlights these limited ownerships that we take to be actual ownership, but it's not actual ownership. What you own is a license. You might as well be renting the thing from your, video store down the street. Wait, just kidding. We got rid of those. Turns out we didn't. They're just digital ownerships of licenses. You don't actually own the content that you're buying. Now, is that a problem? Would you consider it a problem if your very, very cared for data was all of a sudden, I thought it was mine, gone, not really yours? Okay, I have a problem with that, absolutely. So is there a better alternative is my only question. Well, how about some more examples than that? Because that doesn't quite do it, does it? Xbox and Microsoft have done the same thing, removed content from digital libraries that people paid for, assuming I will always have this the way that I always will have a video cassette that you have to come and pry it from my fingers to take it, right? I could still play that if I have a VCR. But it turns out new digital ownership is not all it's cracked up to be. You have license ownership, but you don't have actual ownership of the content. This is interesting to think about. Amazon and Kindle work much the same way. They've actively removed books from rotation or from their libraries. They removed, ironically, this is a great ironic example, 1984 dystopian novel from Kindle services due to issues of control and censorship and ownership. I think that's hilarious. But the point is, well, I thought I owned the book. What do you mean you can take it from me? I paid for it with my hard-earned money. iTunes, same thing. They actually gave us free music. I remember when YouTube dropped a whole album into one of my old iPhones, and it was very hard to get it off my iPhone. So it's just one of those situations where, okay, that was interesting that you forced me to have this ownership over this. And it's what is ownership becomes a central question of this entire conversation. So now let's consider a a Web3 equivalent, right? What would that look like? What would ownership look like in Web3? Well, let's look at book.io as a case in point. Built on the principles of decentralization and immutability, meaning you cannot ever alter it. Book.io leverages blockchain technology to decentralize content storage, enhance security with cryptographic hashes, and ensure greater accessibility and resistance to censorship compared to centralized systems. So I went to specifically Brave New World, since that is one that you can purchase as a item on the blockchain with this immutability that I'm talking about. So this one will never change. The publication will remain consistent perpetually, forever, as long as this blockchain continues to run, and there is nothing that says that it will not continue to run perpetually. So it's an ongoing thing. It will never change. It'll always be available. Now, users can trust on this, in this version, in this new digital version, you can trust that you'll always have content access. It will always be available in its original form, and it will be securely stored because it's distributed over a bunch of computers, over a bunch of networks, right? Now, also, a great case in point, true ownership implies that you can transfer something peer-to-peer. Now, I always bring this up whenever I talk about Book.io. I'm like, if you went up to somebody and said, hey, I know you have a Kindle. I know you have a Nook. I know you have one of these digital readers. I will pay you $100 for one of the books that you are not reading anymore. They couldn't do it. It's not possible. It's not feasible because you don't own the actual book. With this, who wants it? I've got it. Who wants it? I've got it. I'll give it to you. You want it? I'll sell it to you. You want it? I give it away for free because it's mine to do with as I please as a token on the blockchain that I have verifiable ownership over. Now we can extend this over to student records like we did earlier in that example. We can extend it over to the deed for a house, for example. Like all of these are things that are coming in that side of the conversation, right? The AI in conjunction with the blockchain and the cryptocurrencies powering the blockchain, right? Digital identity. Let's sort of speak to something that we do all the time. The model that we use when we log into our accounts through the district are the centralized model. We're very familiar with that. It's permissioned access, so you only allow certain people. It gave rise to the internet. That's exactly how we connected to everything, right? However, all the data, we have to be absolutely 100% transparently clear, belongs to the district. It doesn't belong to us as users, right? This is absolutely true. They can do with the data as they wish. Now, we move on to the federated model, which you may be familiar with again, because it's very easy to use, right? Identity service providers now, like Google, which I already had an account at, became an identity service provider. What does that mean? Well, I go to this website and I don't have to create a new account specific to that website. I can just sign in with my Google. Oh, that's fantastic. Excellent. I already have that account. Why would I create a whole new one for this whole new website, right? It facilitated a lot. Less account management. Absolutely wonderful. What's the risk? Low security. Portability is not easy. When I say low security, I think you know what I'm referring to as far as data hacks that happen literally all the time. And you get that email in your message that says, hey, so and so Google servers were hacked, but hopefully you're fine. Right? Or if you've been affected, right, reach out in the following way or submit your claim. Right? But okay, so there's a problem there as far as security is concerned. So what does the decentralized model look like? What's the difference? Well, in that case, you're not signing in through some arbitrary provider that is creating your identity. You are signing in yourself with your personally owned wallet, which becomes your digital signature. And so you have to verify ownership at all points. But these become stopping points for what is allowed and what is not allowed. And so this is also where I like to talk about blockchains and AIs as symbiotic, because a lot of people imagine that the AIs will just be running rampant, doing what they want in the background. It's like, well, I imagine a scenario more like AIs do XYZ and then run into one of these verification walls where a human user has to submit an input of some kind to then allow the workflow to continue. These are stopping gates, and the way that AI and blockchain will work symbiotically. This is at least the vision, right? Because a lot of this is still being developed or thought about. But this is called self-sovereignty. This is I own my data, I own my value, I own my items truly and wholly because I own the keys that become the cryptographic hash for my wallet and all my transactions that I sign through that wallet. So this is the nature of this new conversation. It does relate to identity. This is transparent and secure, portable data that belongs to the user. So let's imagine a scenario where I graduated from Cal Poly Pomona. Upon graduation, I scanned a QR code. Upon scanning that QR code, my degree and certificate were dropped as a token on the blockchain into my wallet. And then anytime I apply for any other programs, all I have to do is show that one thing and no other data. Not all the data that Google has on me, because Google's got a lot of data, because I allow for them to filter through all my things. Rather, in this case, I get to control what I sign and what I don't sign. And it's a very different way of taking control of your digital identity. But again, using these new technologies. Now, trust and transparency, also very important to talk about. I mean, you don't have to look far to find distrust, right? We are in an election year. We are talking about AI and its role in deep fakes. And what can I trust? And was there a rigged election? And do dead people vote? And how do we really get into that conversation? You know what? How do we avoid that conversation? Blockchain voting solves that problem. That's it. Transparency as far as governance achieved if we decide to use these ecosystems that have transparent traceability, immutable traceability. Did X wallet vote? Yes. Great. Right? What do we assume that that wallet vote was cast by a user? Well, it must be if these keys are owned by an individual. And so the technology itself seeks to address some of these trust problems, these trust issues by creating trustless ecosystems and trustless transactions. We have the verifiable ledgers now on these blockchains that might be familiar to you, right? Maybe you've heard of Bitcoin, and it has the essence of a decentralized ledger that you can actively go and look at what is happening on the chain. Then you had Ethereum, which was the next stage, bringing in what are called smart contracts, not quite AI powered, but just, commands like if this, then that, executions that you can do of that sort. That, of course, will be the foundation layer of a lot of these things that we're talking about here. Blockchains that take it beyond smart contracts now to address some of the sustainability concerns of Bitcoin and some of the governance that again aims at trust and immutability. So now AI and Web3, right? Taking all that into account, assuming that the blockchain becomes the data layer, the layer that the AI will then use to parse information and work with, then now we have this conversation about the real synchronicity between AI and blockchain. And this idea that you'll be able to harness the capacities of these networks to create intelligent, user-centric digital experiences that transform how we interact in the digital world, in the online world. Right? That's the promise. That's what we could have, right? We know that intelligent automation is already here. AI-powered smart contracts backed by blockchain networks would allow you to streamline processes efficiently and track them efficiently. Secure data ecosystems are the goal. Combination of AI and blockchain can create secure, privacy preserving data ecosystems that empower users. Transparent and trustworthy AI, blockchain-based governance models can ensure transparency and accountability in the development and deployment of AI systems. And inclusive digital economies, Web3 and AI can enable new models of value creation and distribution, fostering more equitable access in this digital economy. Now, here's an example that is taken from a book called The Age of Autonomy by Jake Ryan. And I do think it's worth reading so that you can sort of imagine how this all works. He paints a nice little picture here. So I will go ahead and read it, enjoy this little narration, and try to imagine the scenario he's painting. And then there will be enough time, it looks like, for questions and all that. And I do see that the chat is lively. So let's paint a picture of where the world is headed in the age of autonomy. We use a co-op farmer in the Midwest. She's got a sophisticated farming corporation, and she knows where the world is headed. She has already bought and installed precision agriculture products that have sensors all over the farm, has robots tending to the crops, and has an IoT network so her robots, sensors, planting equipment, and irrigation all communicate. Right, so there are three of the tools immediately applied in one scenario. The farmer also purchases a new AI agent software, modules that will help the corporation turn all of the data that they get from the crop's IoT sensors into knowledge. They've purchased some precision irrigation software and some specific weed management software for the robots. She's now set up a decentralized autonomous corporation. DACs are companies with board members and decision makers that can help set goals, thresholds, parameters for the growing season ahead. Based on the trend this year and their planting history, they're going to plant a specific allocation to the farm: corn, beans, soybeans, beets, and wheat. Under their new DAC, they set up a cryptocurrency account on a smart contract platform like Ethereum or Tezos and build custom autonomous business contracts. If certain conditions or events are triggered without the need for human intervention, the DAC writes some custom autonomous contracts that will act on behalf of the DAC. They are permissionless and they run 24/7. The farmers have set their plans, their goals, their actions, their counteractions. They're ready for the season. The preseason activities begin, and one of the buying contracts notices a 4% better deal for soybean seeds from Brazil. So it purchases the seeds with its cryptocurrency account and sends the request to the seed company. During the season, the AI weather agent notices a forecast that's going to produce serious flooding in the beets field. So the AI communicates with the irrigation equipment to stop the watering field until one of the soil sensors measures the correct water threshold. IoT sensors measure and communicate the entire picture of what's going on at the farm back to the autonomous contracts. The AI agents trigger an event on the autonomous contract platform. The DAC has a risk management autonomous contract that exists to help manage the grower's financial risk throughout the season. The autonomous contracts interact with an oracle that communicates weather information from the physical world. If this flooding occurs, it will produce some serious financial risk to the farm. So it looks on the commodities futures exchange to see what price they could get if they sold some corn beets and beets futures. This will lock in a certain price for a percentage of the crops. This will help them mitigate financial risk. All of this is happening without the need of human intervention. This is the world. This is what the world will look like in the age of autonomy. So, giving you there a little picture of what he paints in one of, this is one of the sources that polls at the age of autonomy. He's painting an overplay, an overlapping situation here where these technologies work together. So understanding that and that we can use AI in certain ways or think about it in certain ways, that paints the long-term vision of what will come eventually. For now, we know that the conversation can focus on personalized learning, how we can use AI power and even some of these other tools as they develop, like the metaverse, to create personalized learning situations. Accessible content. Are you making your content accessible, and how can it be made more accessible via AI? Or even just accessible in terms of who can get in, right? Is there a backup network if your Wi-Fi network is down? Is that something that we can consider as far as a use case for Web3? We already talked briefly about credentials and how you maintain blockchain records, or how that could feed into how we maintain student records and who they belong to at the end of the day. Collaborative learning, of course, is always important. So peer-to-peer conversations and us all grow up sharing with each other, and students sharing what they know with each other, and really framing this as an ongoing conversation that includes many tools, right? We can talk about generating artworks now, not just with AI and our voices, but maybe visually. Now there's music, now there's videos. Now can we do a whole plan promoted, a whole project, that is grown via AI power? Transforming industries, right? Industries are transforming. We've talked about that briefly. Give me 1 second. This is really loud. Apologies, bad timing here with my gardener. So, um, what will happen with supply chains? And maybe you've seen that the UFC has recently partnered with the VeChain blockchain to track their gloves, and so sort of leans into this. Well, how will those gloves be tracked? Well, more than likely by AI powered devices, or AI power plus the blockchain equals UFC now has glove tracking that is traceable, is immutable, etc. That's really the purpose of a blockchain like VeChain. It aims to track all goods, right? Decentralized finance. What does that look like? What does that even mean? Well, the fact that it exists is really the conversation here. And should you learn about how it works? Well, our students are individuals who will run into these conversations, so we should at least have basic definitions. Decentralized autonomous organizations in the domain of governance, right? These are DAOs. So imagine that we were a small cohort here who were making decisions instead of big, groups sort of making them for us about the nature of X, Y, or Z, or like a members-based organization where everybody has the ability to sign. And so it's a little bit more egalitarian and democratic practices. I mean, technologies are available that allow you to create DAOs already, any type of DAO that you want. Of course, there's also ethical considerations to consider, as with just AI, and because this still largely involves AI. Privacy and data rights. How do we make sure that the data belongs to the owner of the data, the user who is signing on? Algorithmic bias, which we've covered in many presentations before, and we must accept as far as the limitations of AI and what it can produce. Transparency and accountability, again, a huge thing for many reasons, including voting and governance and trust. And hey, but you said that you did this. I lost the receipt. How do I verify? Like those types of things are being resolved by some of these other Web3 tools. There are still challenges and barriers, of course. This is the biggest one, I think, is technical complexity. A lot of the stuff that I'm talking about now still requires very, very specific types of coders with very specific type of knowledge. And so it's not really inclusive or equitable, but AI can certainly help to make that the case so that our students really are learning how to build these networks and engage through them and tokenize goods in the world and see the value behind all of this stuff that is either being integrated into other places, learning base languages that will make them marketable and profitable in the emerging economies. Um, in any case, technical complexity is a big one. Regulatory uncertainty as well. I mean, AI is a case in point, right? We've been talking here for a little while about AI policies and how will it and how will it not be used? What is the best way to use it ethically? And all those questions do not go away. The EU just passed some legislation on AI. We're doing local stuff, state level stuff. It's very much an ongoing conversation. And so there's still a lot of uncertainty of how it will be applied, which means people sort of stay away or they don't join the conversation. But I think for myself, I see it as the moment to join the conversation. We are already talking about AI. We might as well explore how AI now feeds into these other technologies or works with them in some way. Like, wait, where is this really going if it's not just AI? Scalability and performance, of course, this requires development, but there is active funds that can help us pay for PD for our district, even that are funded by many of these companies that are creating these decentralized ledgers, open source, peer reviewed, things that are academic in focus. And so, grant opportunities, right? Funding our sciences, funding our research. There's a lot that we could look into. Like the AI grant challenge right now is ongoing. So anybody who's interested in that should really look into it. I'll talk a little bit more about it at the end. Collaborative innovation is obviously in the roadmap for how do we get past this hurdle, then this hump of new technology that not everybody is on the same page about. Um, Developing talent, right? Teaching each other, growing together, establish the guidelines as those who enter the conversation and want to do with it, want to do something with it in your classrooms. Maybe you see something possible. So we need education and awareness. So more PD, more of this that we've already started the semester and that we'll continue to do as we lean into these new technologies. But collaborative ecosystems would be great to have, maybe a hub of some kind where all four of our colleges in San Diego, and of course any friends that are viewing from the outside could really take part in, and we could develop this conversation more fully. Uh, it's an open call then to embrace technology. Of course, this was a very hyper positive, hyper focused on the pros presentation. It's very much all still in development, and I hope that you have seen here how it relates then to the metaverse, how it relates to these other technologies that are kind of developing along with AI. There is a great example here that I linked at the bottom, but I won't play the video so we can have some Q&A. But it's a friend of mine who actually was funded for a project where he literally fused together AI and blockchain in the following way. So you could enter this world and sort of, be present on your screen very much like we are now. And then using DALI, so AI was integrated into this world so that with your voice, you could create an artwork. When you play the video later on your own time, you'll see the process if you're interested. But the student, the user could create an artwork with their voice using DALI, very much like you could do now. But then the key difference is that one of these is a blockchain developer. So immediately upon wanting to exit the world, you are given the option of, do you want this to be minted on the blockchain as a native token? So it turns it into an article on the blockchain, immutable, available. So something you create and then could basically have exist forever. Right. So this is a very interesting combination of art, AI, and blockchain. And again, just to save some time for discussion and questions, I will not play the video. It is about 8 minutes. But this was the final presentation in the series. I hope that you have enjoyed AI Demystified, harnessing the power of AI prompting. Art from Words was one of my favorite ones, really talking about some of that art creation. And thanks to Josh Alley for co-presenting with me. The AI day that we did was great. The panel work that we've done with students has been fun. There are tons of ways to involve your students in conversations about all of this technology, AI or otherwise, and they're interested and it's relevant and it's well connected to what has come before. All you have to do is connect it. And so I really feel excited about the possibilities for pedagogical development, how we use these tools, what we do with them. So anyway, that is my presentation. These slides are available for you all. And thank you. I'll definitely save some time here for some Q&A.
Thank you so much, Rodrigo. We've had a number of really great questions in the chat. Amanda, do you want to jump in with your question about Web 2.0?
Sure. Yeah, thank you. And then Rodrigo, hi, I'll see you later today online. Yeah, my question that I wrote in the chat, I'll just read it, that I think and it may have just been something that you threw out there, but I wanted to ask, like, is Web 2.0 actually dead, or is there a sense it exists alongside Web 3.0? Are these divisions super clear cut, like between 1, 2, and 3? Because I got that impression from your explanation, but I also would imagine that like the categories are there for like some of the like canonical experiences, but sure, there's plenty of variation and stuff. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was kind of hoping that is what the Kierkegaard quote could help us like make sense of, right? So like it's always hard to determine when was the life of this thing, right? So like you look back in time and you go, wow, those were the Romantics. Oh, and those were the Victorians. Oh, and those were, the Transcendentalists. And you kind of do it that way. So Web 2 is not dead. There is this thing that there's like a middle ground territory, right, for people who want to bridge the two, called Web 2.5. And so the transition is certainly starting to happen. And there are funds in place, is sort of the point that I was making earlier, to facilitate that if you're interested in research or you are a developer or you have access to developers, but creating real tools that the district that could be used at the district level or that could be provided for educators, that becomes Web 2.5 to 3.0. It's a transition point. But yeah, absolutely, there's no telling where we will say for sure that Web 2 died. Web 2.5 is where we are. We'll call it the mid patch, and Web 3.0 will be here for sure. When someone looks back and says, hey, have you heard of Web 4.0? It's like, oh, well, gotcha. There was a Web 3 at some point in there.
Sure. Thank you. And then next, Natalia had a question about the wallet that you were discussing earlier. Natalia, do you want to jump in?
Yes, thank you. Hi, Rodrigo. Good to see you. Thank you so much. So a lot of the concerns that I have heard and I have myself is identity theft. I was actually a victim of identity theft. It's not fun when it happens. And so a lot of the things you describe will lead to trust some sort of systems to hold information and secure it. So how could we assure that it, let's say in the case that you describe of the person that got a degree in Cal Poly, that they will have that in the blockchain, and that will be lovely that if you can just quickly just send. Right now I was trying to send transcripts when I was applying to graduate school, and it's always a hassle, but how can we guarantee that all of this information is not going to be start to be pirated and cloned, and all the nasty part of having something available that people will take an opportunity to try to steal and so forth?
Yeah, no, great question. That is the main concern of the blockchain side of things, and it's mostly the cryptography and the hashing. It's if you understand how the complex Bitcoin like algorithm works and what it means to mine the coins, then you understand it's like once quantum computers are here, there may be a risk with some of those systems as well. And really, the main risk for that system is 51% ownership of the entire network. at which point you could alter the network's rules. But if no one can get 51% ownership, then no one can change the fundamental rules of this network. So in the case of, let's say, a Cardano network, which is the most decentralized blockchain as far as my understanding, you would have to like own a lot of different nodes. I mean, really do like an EMP attack on like 3 different continents for this server to go down. And so just the robustness of that type of a network system, the fact that it is a distributed system, again, where if like torrents, right, you never own the entire bit of the data, you own a hash of it or a portion of it, and altogether the network can give you the data. But it's that type of stuff which honestly I don't understand as a coder. I understand as a non-coder and non-dev. But going back to the point about the wallet, the transaction, it's inappropriate to call it a wallet. Really, what you own is a set of keys, like a set of keys that become your main item for security. Like anything that is signed with those keys must be Natalia's, because no one else could have those unless Natalia gave them to them. That type of a system determines, well, did Natalia vote? Well, yes, a vote was cast. Do I need to know who she voted for? No, absolutely not. So only certain knowledge would be sought by the AI, or whatever machines are now facilitating that data transfer. So it's really about then how we code the AI, what we tell it to look for and what to allow for. And really my only answer as far as how it's more secure is that it is fundamentally built to avoid scams and to avoid data breaches where you get your identity stolen. And the federated model is easy, right? Google has all of my information too. But if you are interested in decentralized systems and have a concern about, well, will we eventually move towards all decentralized models? I mean, why not start learning about how those work now? That's simply how, where I sit. And then I can still decide to have both. I do have both. I have a blockchain wallet keys where I sign transactions. I have my regular Google Mail where I log in via Google Mail. And we are getting even to the point where you'll have a federated blockchain model. So you can sign into the blockchain with Google, right? So all it takes is good devs, but the fundamental structure of the blockchain is what gives it that trustlessness. And people like zero knowledge proofs are on the way. And like, what does that mean? Like, it's when you check someone's ID and you have to verify their age, but not where they live and not their eye color and not only this, please. So in the case of Natalia sending her records to UC, wherever she's applying, she'll hit a little button that says, would you like to approve sending your records to said university? And then you'll have a little option where you can click yes or no, or which ones to send. Go ahead, please. I will sign it. And the verification will only come through your wallet signature. So, I mean, it gets like a wallet, but it's not really a wallet. It's a set of keys that secure your decision. So apologies.
Thank you, Rodrigo.
Apologies, that's more confusing. Like, I hope it's not.
No, you just trigger a lot of things that I have to investigate that you mentioned. But in the case of the farmer that you explained, like I was like concerned when I heard no humans were involved in this, and I think that people get concerned that robots will replace us. So not for you to discuss, but it's something that we should probably have in mind of how we support our students, our community, so that they don't feel that is replacement, is an enhancement.
Yeah.
And no human will be involved in certain things that are kind of tedious, but humans can be in this other part of aspects. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I will make sure in my future presentations to not like let that be the suggestion at all, because what this is more of a, if you understand that is a looming reality, not the desirable reality, because you never want to displace anyone, right, from doing something that sustains their livelihood. But if we understand that there are machines being developed already that work in this way, and that this is happening around us, for me, it becomes more about, what Paulo Freire called the consciência tajão, the idea that you understand really your existential reality. And I may not like it, but I have to understand it if I'm really going to react to it. And that's just where I come from. You know, it's neither to champion these models as the end all be all, nor to, it's really more to stand in the middle and say, okay, I've evaluated pros and cons because I really think that way. So how can we use this possibly flawed system for the better? How can we use this new technology, although it was meant for that, for this, right? Like, how do we start to synergize these tools that are here to create things like one case in point? I'll give another example that it relates to someone in the audience. Dr. Marcy Sawyer and I talked very briefly about a video game that she wanted to make, right? And at the time, I couldn't really imagine how to create it. But Marcy, if you email me now, we could talk about some tools involving AI that now can create the type of game that you were thinking about. And so it's new tools, old ideas, maybe desires that we've had, but like how can we sort of turn them towards being useful for our students, showing them their existential reality. And I mean, a lot of this people talk about it like stuff that's coming or it's in the future. And I go, no, no, no. Like that's happening now. And many think of it as something that's happening later. So AI was, I think, a great way to knock down that whole idea that we could somehow wait around and let it all develop around us and instead say, well, I can have a voice in this. I can really shape the conversation here. So I thank you, Natalia, for coming up and speaking, and I welcome anybody to please come and share your thoughts.
Thank you, Rodrigo. It's Marcy. I can't wait to talk to you about this some more.
Awesome. Great. Those tools are new, but they can now create like high quality Unreal Engine 5 games that you could sort of narrate this, narrate the story or the plot. You know, we can build in some mechanics like jump or punch or pick up. And yeah, so let's definitely talk in the background.
Yeah.
Cool, cool. Yeah, is there other questions? I know we are coming up on we got till 45 and we can stick around for a few.
Yes, and we've got one more question in the chat from Amanda about climate change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was more just like the age of autonomy like thing that just made me think of and it could be something that, you know, it's just like thoughts going through my head, the way that it sounded like the farmer was going to use like, you know, past data and like algorithms and things like that. And so there's a sense and use crypto pricing. And I just, you know, my sense is like, oh, like, you know, if we have climate change, they're like, oh, when the weather's like this, the next it's going to be like this. So if we have climate change, like how good is that prediction going to be? And I also wonder like, oh, does crypto like, you know, make like prices fluctuate a lot? So then it's like, oh no, like I never would have let it like spend that money and like on things or like, you know, get to that high of a price because the algorithm says like, oh yes, go buy this, or AI says says go buy this. And it could, I'm maybe just reflecting my misunderstanding of these processes. And like I couldn't help think of like Wayfair Gate that was like in 2020. Did you hear about this, where like they had these like cabinets that like they changed, I think they were doing like some kind of A/B testing with the names, and like they'd given like these like clearly like female names, like not common names, and like my partner went and looked at like the social security database and they were all from like the same kind of chunk of like names in the like in numbers. So they're probably just doing some A/B testing. And then I think they forgot to put like a price cap on like, you know, the prices. So like the prices just went crazy. So like they're selling like, you know, a cabinet named like Aurora for like $15,000, that it wasn't worth that. So that was just like, you know, and they were saying, oh my God, they're selling children like through Wayfair, like, because like that's not what that cabinet is worth. So sorry, I'm bringing that back to like, oh, I wonder like, you know, what problems that could present, or like, or maybe, you know, that like, oh, actually the technology does prevent that from happening. Like,
No, what I do think is that you have the right concerns that I have as well. And so having these concerns, I actively want to be involved in how this AI is taught to think and what it looks for and what it allows and what it does not allow. not this one AI that will do it, because it won't be any one, but the fact that AI models will be doing it, and that regulation, like big scale regulation, again, requires our input. Now, you are talking about like scams and whether or not those can happen on one form of currency exchange, and absolutely, they could happen in any form of currency exchange. The thing that I like about the blockchain is that it allows, again, for traceability. You can track
Mhm.
exactly where something came from, who bought that cabinet. If you really wanted to know, it's on the blockchain. Like that
Yeah.
type of traceability is something you don't have with US dollars even.
Hmm. Because yeah, I think like one of the things I was thinking about is that maybe because it's suggesting crypto, and like my understanding is crypto prices fluctuate a
Mhm.
lot. So that like maybe, they'd say like, okay, yeah, buy the like, I don't know, the radish seeds or something like that. And then because crypto's so variable, like they
Right.
accidentally like, the thing goes and buys it, and like, I'm sure they'd have to put in like specific price things,
Right.
but I just worry that like, yeah, let's go buy radish seeds for like, I don't know, 20 times what they're worth or something. So that would, more than scams, it's like,
Sure.
legitimately buying them, but
Right.
like,
Yeah.
having the machine.
Faulty usage. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The idea that you would consider all of that is how sort of blockchain operates. I don't presume to like talk for any one blockchain that could do this, but this is just, again, the way that it would connect. And you are right that blockchain prices do fluctuate. There are what are called stable coins. There's this whole conversation around whether or not those are good for us or bad for us, but they are out there. That opens up conversations now about like central bank digital currencies, like CBDCs, or what those are called. That's a whole other can of worms to go down. But those appear to be stable, appear to stabilize the markets. To be completely fair, like US buying power, like US dollar buying power is like 20% down since 2021. So the US dollar doesn't hold its value at $1 either. Like, this is a misconception about the dollar, that like everything is just a dollar, but like the dollar can buy you less now than it could in 2020. And it can buy you way less now than it could buy years before that. So the Forex markets actively make money on the dollar's fluctuation like day to day. So I think it really is about rethinking how we think about value, and certainly keeping in mind all the concerns that you have, because those are the right ones. Like, how do we make sure it is accounting for the fluctuation of, hey, you know what, I was holding this token and that one went up. Well, did you account for that in your processing? That's, I think, where the AI would come in real time, be predicting things on an ongoing basis, giving the farmer updates. It wouldn't be, the fact that there would be no human intervention as far as the farmer's concerned would simply be because they have programmed the agents, told the agents what to think about, consider varying prices. I think in the example, actually, the individual only purchased the seeds because he noticed that there was a fluctuation in their
Okay,
price.
gotcha.
Right. So, like,
Okay.
cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any final questions? If not, my gardener is going crazy out here. I hope it's not too loud. And again, thank you guys for being here and for being interested in all this craziness. And I just wanted, with this presentation, to paint a picture of the grand possibility. Awesome. You can't hear it. Fantastic. So this is speculative to some extent, but if you think about how it could factor into conversations about like real ownership, and why publish in this new medium? Well, why was it worth publishing in the video medium when that came out? Like, why publish in a physical medium? Well, why publish in writing at all when writing came out? Because that's a technology too, right? Well, we had the oral mode before. We used to have other sounds that we made. But wait, we developed languages. People, that's a technology too. And we choose to publish in all these different ways. Blockchain, I look at it as more as just like, where am I publishing to? And what I like about it is that you can take whatever you publish wherever you go. It gains that transferability, that I can take it anywhere because it's always available, either on the global server or behind some secure keys or behind, etc. But again, if you're unfamiliar with cryptocurrencies, remember that their only purpose, their only real purpose, is to power blockchain networks. Like when you go to a machine at Chuck E. Cheese and you pop in a token to make the machine go brrr, right? Like that's all they're doing. Now, the fact that they take on arbitrary value and that people like inflate them to crazy, go to the moon and all that stuff, that's a fundamental misunderstanding of the application of a new technology. Like it is about real world assets being tokenized on a blockchain where they can be verifiable. That's the real purpose of it. That's why I'm such a big fan of Book.io. As far as OER is concerned, imagine that we could create a single reader, right? Collectively, we create a reader. We then decide that we're going to tokenize that reader. How many students do we have in the entire district? I don't know. Let's just make 100 million copies of that book, right? It's on the chain now. It's minted as an NFT on the chain. And now any student who's taking X, Y, or Z English classes in the entire district will be airdropped this OER compliant book that was created by the district, was airdropped to students for free by the district because publication is so easy on the blockchain and accessible. Then does that not solve OER? Like, do we not have now education in the hands of whoever wants it? Downloadable books in the hands of whoever wants it? And that's one technology. That's just one application. Video game creation, like we were talking about earlier with Marcy, how do we do that? How do I, as a non-coder, non-dev, do that? I want to. Well, AI is going to help with that now, and new tools being developed by those of us that are interested in these technologies. Well, we'll make it happen in the near future. We'll find a way. We'll work with you. We'll work collaboratively, because the age of autonomy turns out to be really about working together. People saying, "Hey, I want this." Well, hey, I've got a dev who can do this. Wait a minute, I've got this other idea. Can we throw that in too? We should. Let's do it. And you just build it out. That's very much the ethos of the space as I have experienced it. And then there is other conversations as well. But it's in these circles that I mainly talked AI first before I spoke in academic circles. And so we were very much focused on entrepreneurial ideas and creativity and application beyond plagiarism only, because it's not really a thing outside of academia. Now, in the business world, people have been using AI for a good while now. So learning about a lot of these things also ends up being what AI can help you with. Like if you want to learn more about how blockchains work, go up, tell AI to teach you that. Like you're 5 and like you're 10 and like you're, a master level business owner who is starting some form of a business. Have it do those things for you. Maybe you want to learn more about how blockchain and cryptocurrencies work together. AI can help you with that now. Maybe you want to learn more about IoT because you didn't really know that you were using IoT this whole time by tapping into Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and all these things that connect to each other. Okay, maybe you want to go and look at more at how robotics will shape the conversation. But we talked a little bit about it in that example, right? Where they'll be doing a lot of the physical labor, and the idea then would be to train engineers and people to program and people to code the blockchains and people to code the software and be creative in how they use all these technologies, and etc. And build communities. That's the big thing too. Like you are here as part of this community. I appreciate that you have stuck around and listened to me as long as you have, that you came to as many as 6 presentations. What I am working on here at the very end is I'm going to be minting an NFT that I will be giving out to anybody who wants it. It'll be easily claimable and an object that sits in the blockchain. Maybe we'll take the San Diego crest there and make some cool artwork using it. And that'll be a nice little badge of certification. I attended, Professor Gomez's PD series in 2023 and 2024. We'll shout out Laura Pachenko for putting it all together, and the district here for supporting all of these PD opportunities for people who are interested. And maybe we'll see you at the next series, because obviously these will be ongoing. Please shape the conversation by requesting what you would benefit from the most. And yeah, I'll be around. You'll catch me in different places, just talking, having conversations like this, because I truly enjoy all of this. So thank you again.